Welcome team, Bonnie Kissinger here. This is a beginner yoga video on pigeon pose, a seated twist, and bridge pose, a back bend. So we're going to start off with pigeon, and pigeon can be hard on the knees, especially since we're weight bearing and we're kind of fixing the pelvis to the ground. So we're going to do a couple of different versions of pigeon, and I'm going to show you some modifications to do as we go into other flow videos. So let's start pigeon with the left foot forward. So what you do is putting your foot up here, okay? And then you walk that back foot back. So you might end up being right here, okay, if you're really tight in here. So what you can do is have a block or a pillow and just sit right here. Pigeon is a really good hip flexor stretch, but you want to not stress the back out by having the pelvis tilted. So, like so, or sitting here. If you have the flexibility, kind of hang out here for a second. Make sure that the front knee is always quiet. Okay, so we're sitting here, and you might feel inner thigh, hamstring, hip flexor. You might feel your back. If you feel your back hurting right now, go ahead and lift the heart. So one more key before we switch sides is that this foot, the front foot, is flexed and the back toes are facing directly backwards. So this is kind of a modified easy version of pigeon. So switching to the other side, I just roll and flip around. Notice I keep my leg planted up here. The idea with pigeon is that the shin is parallel with the top edge of the mat, but that requires a lot of flexibility. So you can always have the foot come back towards the groin, the foot's flexed. And again, if you need a prop, put your block underneath your hip. And so this is a nice version of pigeon. Again, hip and hamstring. We always lift up the heart. The core is always working, but you want to try to let the hips relax down. One thing about pigeon, if you have SI issues, pigeon is a destabilizer of the SI joint, meaning it makes things looser, destabilizing. It's not good or bad. It's just if you have problems with your SI joint, you'll want to tag me and ask, because there's some, pigeon can make it worse, and sometimes pigeon shouldn't even be done if you have SI issues. Okay? So rolling back. And then pausing in the center, let's go ahead and put our feet together and let the knees hang out to the side for a second, holding yourself up. Okay, pigeon on the other side again. Left foot forward. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult. If you have a hard time getting into it, just go back to the first earlier version. Remember, the foot is flexed, and then if you have the space, coming down here. Notice that I'm not cocked up like this or like that. You want to really kind of maintain this level back and a little bit of ease. So now I'm feeling a lot of stretch in my hip. If you have more space, then you just come down further into pigeon. And imagine that your hip is your favorite balloon. Talk your hip into relaxing, okay? We'll do one more breath, and then we'll come up, and then go ahead and switch sides. So again, have the front foot, trying to get it parallel to the top edge of the mat, and then walk your legs back. If the foot needs to come back towards your leg, that's okay. So here we are, talking to the hip, asking it how it's doing. And then coming forward if you have the space. If you don't, just stay in the upward position. We're wanting to have the left hip come down, stay level, and then if you have more space, bring your head down. And then go ahead and coming up. Around. We're going to switch to one more version of pigeon. This one is flaming pigeon. So the left foot in front, Switching around, scooching it back. Okay, so this is the flaming part. This is where we add hip flexor psoas. The psoas muscle can be a problem within the back and the hip girdle. We'll go over that in more detail when we cover SI issues. So on this one, make sure your front foot is flexed, and what we're going to do, if you can, core is holding you up. So this first place here is to practice holding yourself up. So the core is holding myself up, my legs are working. And then to grab the back foot, okay? So this is a nice quad and hip flexor stretch. However, if the knee starts hurting, perhaps ask yourself if you need to stop, okay? If you have more space, the toe goes in your elbow and you're here. And then if you had even more space and the back was in the game, you would connect your hands back, but mine's not. So we're going to stop here for a flaming pigeon. Okay, go ahead and release. And switch to the other side. Right shin close to the top. Scoot your hip back. Okay. Find this core work. Okay, ask your back how it feels. And then finding the left foot, flaming pigeon. You could stay here. It's a nice quad stretch, nice hip flexor stretch. Or see about the foot coming into the crook of the arm, the hand comes back for a flaming pigeon. Go ahead and release that. And join me for butterfly or bound angle, and hang out here for a moment. Okay, good. So we're going to move on to a seated twist. Twists are really good for digestion and also releasing the back. If your back is hurting, the best way to get the back to stop hurting is twisting instead of forward bending or back bending. So we're going to start off with our left foot forward and put the right foot close to here. You can hug it up, pull your core up. And this foot, the extended foot, it's not lazy, it's actually working, okay? And then we want to lift the heart nice and tall. You could lift your arm to extend the spine. And what we're going to do is a closed twist. We're going to wrap the left hand around and use our core work to look behind us. Remember that my foot is staying active, and I look behind me. And then as we breathe, each time I exhale, I think of my back releasing and twisting around. And then go ahead, releasing forward, both feet out. And then bring the left foot in. Lift your heart nice and tall. The hand can come up and extend the spine. Then wrap the right hand around. Use your core to twist your torso and look behind you. Remember that the feet are working. And inhaling forward. So that's a fairly easy twist. Ask your back how it feels side to side. If you have one side that's a problem versus the other, go ahead and put a comment into the comments and tag me. Sometimes there's things that we need to be doing. I have a rib that likes to go out, so that causes me trouble in this twisting. We're going to do another twist. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult. So we're going to place the foot on the other side. The foot needs to be flat on the floor, not kind of hanging out here. So if you can't get the foot flat on the floor, go ahead and just stay here. So here, foot is working, heart is lifting. I'm going to twist with an exhale. Hang out here for a moment. And then I'm going to kick it up a notch. I'm going to bring my arm out. Use my abs and my shoulder to twist myself around. Hand is active, and then I look behind me. And I'm breathing and exhaling and relaxing. And go ahead and release that. Send both feet out. And then pulling the left in to the opposite side, use flat. Heart lifts up. can wrap with the right hand and twist. Bring the hand on the outside. Use that as leverage to twist around a little bit more if the back is okay and the hand is active. The active hand keeps the shoulder in joint. And go ahead and release. Now we're going to work on bridge pose. I'm going to do it from a couple of different angles so you can see. Bridge pose can be difficult in that you're not used to firing the muscles that way. The hip flexors are tight. So in bridge pose, we want to keep our shoulders on the floor. And there's a rule in bridge pose. Because you're going to end up with pressure on your neck, on your C vertebrae, your cervical vertebrae, you want to always maintain a gaze that is straight up. Do not look at the cat, at your husband, at the kid when you're doing bridge pose. It is imperative that you keep your eyes always looking up. Okay? So bridge pose starts here. And then my feet are hip distance apart and my knees are hip distance apart. And so this is kind of the first bridge pose that we're going to do. Notice that my shoulders are on the ground. My gaze always goes up. There's pressure right here, so you always want to have your gaze straight up and not moving the neck while you're doing bridge pose. So this is the first bridge pose. I'm working to bring my hips up, and it's not just the glutes, it's the whole core that's lifting up. So this is the first bridge, and you want to make sure that the knees stay hip distance apart. If they're flailing out, put a block between your knees and squeeze it. And if you want extra work, lift the toes for bridge pose. Okay, go ahead and release. We'll do bridge pose 2 more times. So this time, as we inhale up, we're going to roll onto the delts of our arms, and if your shoulders allow, clasp your hands underneath you. So we come up to bridge pose, I roll onto my arms, and then I connect underneath. So this is a little bit higher bridge pose. Ideally, you want to get your feet 90-degree angle, so you might need to adjust your feet. You might need to have someone show you where to put them. So you don't want them out here. I hope mine are at 90. But you want them like here, and the feet are working nice and solid. Knees are staying hip distance apart. And I'm lifting my heart towards my chin. And go ahead and release. We're going to do one more bridge pose. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult. So if you find that you want to keep with the previous 2 versions, that's okay. So inhaling up, roll your hands underneath, make it on your shoulders. Okay, nice bridge. Ask yourself where you're at. And then inhaling the right leg up, nice and straight. Notice that the hips don't sink down. The foot in the air is working. So breathing and holding that. And then bring the foot down. Pause for a moment, lifting the opposite up. Lifting up. Bring the foot down. And go ahead and release that. So pausing here for a moment, this would be a good moment to ask your back what it needs. Is it fine? Does it need the knees pulled to the chest? Or a little bit of twisting? So there is pigeon, a seated twist, and bridge pose. Hope you enjoy. More videos at bonniekissinger.com. Enjoy.